Namaste. Today our topic is ecosystem services and human well-being. The subtitle captures the central question we will work through. How does nature support society? This is not a simple or abstract question. It has real implications for how we make decisions about land, resources, and development. So let us begin. Here is the plan for today's lecture. We begin with a clear definition of ecosystem services. We then examine why this concept is useful in sustainability thinking. After that, we classify ecosystem services into four broad categories: provisioning, regulating, supporting, and cultural services. We then ask how biodiversity contributes to these services. Finally, we consider real examples, explore why services are often undervalued, and close with an important caution about the limits of the framework. Before we define ecosystem services in detail, let us recall an important chain from earlier in the course. Biodiversity supports ecosystem function. Ecosystem function supports ecosystem services. Ecosystem services support human well-being. And human actions can strengthen or weaken the entire chain. This lecture focuses on the middle part of that relationship. We are asking how living systems generate benefits for people and why biodiversity matters to the stability of those benefits. Keeping this chain in mind will help the new material fall into place. Let us begin with the definition. Ecosystem services are the benefits people obtain from ecosystems. This is a practical and powerful definition because it connects ecological reality to human life. Ecosystems do not only contain organisms, they include relationships, processes, and functions that produce or support human well-being. When we use the term ecosystem services, we are not saying that nature exists only for humans. We are saying that human societies depend deeply on ecological systems, often in ways that are overlooked. The word services here is a framing device. It draws attention to what ecosystems do for us, even when we take it for granted. A useful way to understand ecosystem services is to remember that ecosystems are not static collections of species. They function. Nutrients move through organisms and soil. Water flows, gets absorbed, and is filtered. Plants capture solar energy and build organic material. Predators, pollinators, decomposers, and microbes interact in ways that shape the behavior of the whole system. Human benefits arise from these living and non-living processes. So ecosystem services are not separate from ecology. They are ecology seen from the perspective of human dependence. The concept is useful for several connected reasons. First, it makes ecological benefits visible. Many people benefit from ecosystem processes without realizing it. Giving these processes a name and a category helps them make part of conversation about planning and policy. Second, the framework helps connect biodiversity to everyday social and economic concerns. Third, it helps decision makers think more broadly when evaluating land use or development proposals. A wetland may look like unused land if we ignore its ecological function. But when we consider flood control, water filtration, habitat value, and livelihood support, the same wetland appears very differently. The framework reveals dependence that might otherwise remain hidden. One of the most important ideas in this lecture is hidden dependence. Many ecological services work quietly in the background. Because they are not always bought or sold directly, they may be ignored in planning and in economic accounting. Often, people become aware of a service only after it has been lost. Flooding after wetland destruction, crop decline after pollinator loss, and water stress after forest degradation are all real examples of services that became visible only through absence. This is why short-term development decisions can look beneficial at first, while creating deeper long-term costs. Hidden dependence is not a small problem. It is one of the central challenges of sustainability. Ecosystem services are commonly grouped into four broad categories. These are provisioning services, regulating services, supporting services, and cultural services. This classification is a useful teaching tool. Although real ecosystems often generate several types of services at the same time. The categories help us organize the idea, but we should not imagine them as rigid boxes. In practice, one ecological system can support material benefits, stabilizing benefits, foundational ecological processes, and cultural meanings all together. With that said, let us examine each category in turn. Provisioning services are usually the easiest to recognize because they are direct and material. They include food, fresh water, fuel wood, fiber, and raw materials. These are products that people obtain from ecosystems. Agriculture, fisheries, forests, and grazing systems all provide ecosystem services that are provisioning services. Because these services are tangible and often enter markets directly, they are easier to value economically. However, that ease can also be misleading. Focusing only on provisioning can cause us to treat ecosystems as warehouses of extractable products, while missing their broader functions. Ecosystems are far more than sources of things we can harvest. Regulating services are especially important because they reduce risk, stabilize conditions, and support the functioning of human systems. These include climate regulation, flood control, water purification, pollination, and pest or disease regulation. The image on this slide illustrates what happens when one regulating service fails. When vegetation holding sand in place was disrupted, sandbars began to move. The result is visible here. Sand has encroached onto the road and completely buried the railway track to the point of making it unusable. This is a striking example of how ecological disruption can translate directly into infrastructure loss and economic cost. Regulating services are operating all the time, but their value is often recognized only after they are gone. Supporting services are foundational ecological processes that make all other services possible. These include nutrient cycling, soil formation, primary production, and habitat provision. They are not always directly consumed by people, but they are essential. Without soil formation and nutrient cycling, food production and water regulation would eventually weaken or collapse. Supporting services remind us that ecosystems have deep functional layers, and what we use at the surface depends on processes that may be invisible but nonetheless indispensable. Cultural services show that ecosystems matter beyond material terms. Landscapes and species contribute to recreation, education, aesthetic value, spiritual meaning, and a sense of place. The image on this slide shows a signboard reading Scenic Walk, marking a tourism trail through a natural landscape. This is a direct example of a cultural service in practice. The trail exists because people find value in experiencing the environment, value that is real and economically significant through tourism and recreation, even though it does not involve extracting any physical product. These services are often hard to express in market terms, but they are real. Human well being includes identity, meaning, and experience alongside material needs. And a sustainability approach that ignores cultural services misses part of what communities genuinely value about nature. Real ecosystems do not usually provide only one service. A forest may store carbon, regulate local climate, influence water flow, support biodiversity, and supply materials all at the same time. A wetland may moderate flooding, filter water, provide habitat, and support livelihoods together. When planning focuses on a single objective, it underestimates the total value of the system. Biodiversity contributes to this multifunctionality because different organisms support different ecological roles. Losing biodiversity can therefore reduce not just one service, but the capacity of the whole system to deliver several services simultaneously. How does biodiversity support ecosystem services? The answer begins with ecological roles. Different species pollinate, decompose, regulate populations, build soil, and structure habitats. Diversity increases resilience because not all species respond to stress in the same way. When conditions change through drought, disease, or temperature shift, a more diverse system is better able to maintain overall function. Biodiversity therefore contributes not only to service generation but also to service reliability over time. A key concept here is functional diversity. Species differ in what they actually do within ecosystems. Some perform similar roles, providing redundancy if one is lost. Others perform highly distinct roles that cannot easily be replaced. If important ecological roles disappear, services may decline quickly, even if some species remain. This is why biodiversity loss is not only a conservation concern, it is a practical sustainability concern with direct consequences for human welfare. Ecosystem services are valuable not only when they exist, but when they remain reliable over time. Reliability depends on resilience, the ability of system to keep functioning despite stress or disturbance. More diverse systems contain multiple functional pathways. So if one is disrupted, others may compensate. Highly simplified systems may produce short-term outputs, but become fragile under changing conditions. Sustainable development must therefore look beyond immediate gains and consider whether the ecological systems that generate those gains are stable enough to last. When biodiversity declines, service loss is often gradual or delayed. A system may continue functioning for a while with reduced resilience and fewer alternative pathways. This creates a dangerous illusion that degradation has little cost. In reality, effects may appear later through food insecurity, water stress, flood risk, or livelihood instability. Delayed impact is not low importance. A cost that appears years later is still a real cost, and it may be far harder to reverse. Pollination is one of the clearest examples of ecosystem services in practice. The ecological process is plant reproduction. The service outcome is crop production and food system support. Biodiversity matters here because different pollinators operate under different conditions, at different times, and with different plant species. A diverse pollinator community provides more reliable service than a simplified one, and its loss can affect agriculture and human nutrition in concrete, measurable ways. Pollination also teaches us a broader lesson. Many crop systems depend on ecological interactions that extend beyond field boundaries. Biodiversity in nearby habitats, seasonal cycles, and landscape structure all contribute to pollination success. Food production is therefore not only a matter of seeds, fertilizers, and irrigation. It is partly an ecosystem outcome. Recognizing this connects food security to biodiversity in a grounded and practical way. Wetlands provide several services at once. They store water, moderate floods, filter pollutants, and provide habitat. Depending on the region, they also support fisheries, grazing, and local livelihoods. Wetland loss is often far more costly than land conversion, value suggests, because the interconnected services it removes do not simply disappear. Their absence is felt across hydrology, local economies, and community resilience. A healthy wetland reduces flood intensity, improves water quality, and supports biodiversity together. If it is destroyed, the cost shifts onto communities through flood damage, water treatment expenses, or declining fisheries. This is why ecological protection is sometimes best understood as infrastructure protection. Sustainability analysis must look beyond conversion benefits and consider the full service value that an ecosystem maintains. Forests store carbon, moderate local climate, influence water cycles, and provide habitat for a wide range of organisms. They may also support livelihoods, non-timber products, recreation, and cultural values. Forests are often evaluated only by timber volume or carbon stock, but the ecosystem services framework shows their significance extends far beyond any single output. Assessing a forest only by what can be extracted means missing most of what it actually does. Forest effects on water flow, local climate, erosion control, and habitat connectivity can reach communities and landscapes at considerable distances. This is why development decisions in one location can create social and ecological consequences elsewhere. The ecosystem services framework encourages spatial thinking that goes beyond the land parcel itself. We must ask not only what happens inside the boundary, but what functions that parcel provides to the broader system. Mangroves reduce wave energy, protect shorelines, serve as nursery habitats for aquatic life, store carbon, and support local livelihoods. They show that ecosystem services are as important in coastal and marine contexts as in forests or farmlands. Their loss has been directly associated with increased coastal vulnerability and declining fishery productivity in many parts of the world, making them one of the clearest examples of how biodiversity rich systems protect both people and nature simultaneously. Not all ecosystem services are visible. Soil organisms decompose organic matter, recycle nutrients, maintain soil structure, and support plant growth. Without this activity, the productivity of farming, forests, and grasslands would rapidly decline. This reminds us that biodiversity includes microorganisms and hidden communities, not only the visible plants and animals. Much of what human societies depend on rests on ecological work happening entirely below the surface. Urban green spaces show that ecosystem services are not limited to distant wilderness. Trees, parks, wetlands, and green corridors within cities, regulate temperature, improve air quality, support recreation, and provide habitat. Sustainability is not only about protecting far off ecosystems, it is also about designing human settlements that work with ecological processes. Urban areas with green infrastructure tend to be more livable, more resilient, and less costly to maintain over time. When we observe any ecosystem, forest, wetland, coastal zone, or urban park, we should learn to read it ecologically and socially at the same time. The same landscape can be a habitat, a part of a water system, a climate buffer, a source of cultural meaning, and a provider of material support. These functions overlap and reinforce each other. The ecosystem services lens trains us to see the full picture rather than a single use. Ecosystem services matter because they support survival, stability, and quality of life altogether. Provisioning services supply food, water, and materials. Regulating services reduce risk. Supporting services maintain the ecological base. Cultural services shape identity, meaning, and experience. Human well being is not built independently of nature. It rests on ecological systems that operate continuously, whether or not we pay attention to them. Many ecosystem services are systematically undervalued because they are not sold in markets. Their benefits are diffuse and their loss often becomes visible only after degradation has already occurred. Conventional decision making captures extractive value far more easily than regulatory, supporting, or cultural value. And this creates a structural bias towards short term gains and against ecological protection, a bias that sustainability planning must actively work to correct. Market price is not the same as total value. Fish can be priced. The flood buffering effect of a wetland is far harder to price before it is lost. Cultural meaning may resist monetary language entirely. If decisions rely only on market signals, they will systematically underestimate the importance of ecosystems, leading to a situation of market failure. Market failure occurs when the free market fails to allocate resources efficiently, leading to a suboptimal distribution of goods and services and a net loss of social welfare. Sustainable development requires broader forms of valuation and a willingness to recognize benefits that do not appear in standard price systems. Sustainable development is not possible if it destroys the ecological systems that support human well being. Ecosystem services offer one of the clearest reasons why biodiversity belongs at the center of sustainability analysis. Biodiversity maintains the functioning and reliability of service generating systems. Development that undermines those systems may appear successful briefly, but it weakens the foundation on which long term social and economic well being depends. The framework is most useful when applied to real decisions. For any proposed land use change or development, planners must ask, what services does this ecosystem provide? Who benefits from them? Who would bear the cost? What are the short term gains? And what long term functions are at risk? These questions widen the frame of analysis and make ecological values part of the conversation from the very outset, rather than an afterthought. A common planning failure occurs when an ecosystem appears economically unimportant because its visible extractive value is low. Once hidden services are counted, the picture changes. After degradation, communities may face flooding, water treatment cost, declining livelihoods, or erosion. Restoration is often costly and incomplete. Prevention is consistently more sustainable than late repair. which is why upfront ecological analysis is far more valuable than damage response. The ecosystem services framework is useful but not complete. Nature does not matter only because it is useful to humans. Biodiversity also has ethical, intrinsic, and cultural significance that cannot be reduced to service language or monetary value. Protecting ecosystems only when direct human utility can be demonstrated risks several serious errors. A good sustainability education broadens the valuation of nature. As Baba Diyum said, in the end, we will conserve only what we love. We love only what we understand. We will understand only what we are taught. The most important ideas from today are these. Ecosystem services are benefits people obtain from ecosystems. These benefits depend on ecological function, not merely the physical presence of land or a species. Biodiversity helps generate and stabilize services through functional diversity and resilience. And human well-being depends more deeply on ecological systems than is often admitted in development planning. The key terms to retain from today are ecosystem services, provisioning services, regulating services, supporting services, cultural services, functional diversity, and resilience. These terms will continue to matter throughout this course. Learning them precisely will help you interpret the course's arguments and apply them in analysis and assessments. Use 4 directions to guide your revision. First, define ecosystem services clearly, including their scope. Second, distinguish this topic from related ideas and avoid common misconceptions. Third, explain the main mechanisms, how ecosystem services are generated, how they are categorized, how they are affected by biodiversity loss. And fourth, apply these ideas to conservation, sustainable development, and real-world decisions. In the next lecture, we turn to sustainability metrics, indicators, and boundaries. We will move from the concept of services to the practical tools used to assess sustainability and identify ecological limits. Before we close, consider this question. How can the ideas from today help us understand or solve a real sustainability challenge? You might think about a local environmental issue, a land use decision, a livelihood system that depends on nature, or a case where ecological resilience has been weakened. Ask which category of service is at stake, who benefits, who bears the risk, and what a better informed decision might look like. Connecting these concepts to real situations is precisely what this course is preparing you for. And that is all for today. Thank you for your attention. Jai Hind.